Good morning. We want to welcome you to Journey Church. If you don't mind, we're going to use this time to praise and worship our God. If you'd like to stand, let's go ahead. We have a new song for you this morning. It's a song called In the River. And you may have heard it, I don't know, on Caleb or whatever, but it's a song about God's overflowing love. And we're going to ask you a little bit, because it's the first service, we're going to make it fill it up a little bit. What if we use our hands and maybe warm up a little bit?
There is a
These are the early risers. You guys are awake. Let our praise be your welcome. Let our songs be a sign we are here for you. We are here for you. Let your breath only true God. Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring, the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no rival, you have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the glory, yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is! What a powerful name it is! The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is! Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is! The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is! The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is! The name of Jesus. Father God, we want to thank you so much for this time of worship, and thank you just for who you are and your Holy Spirit in this room. You may be seated. We're going to go ahead and we're going to welcome Steve up to the stage.
Well, good morning. How are you guys doing today? Good to see you guys here. We're so glad that you're here. Hey, if this is your first time with us, we're so glad that we're here. I can't hear myself. I think I'm on. We're so glad that you're here. I know at times it can be tough coming into a new environment, especially a church, and so we're so glad that you took time out of your Sunday morning to come and visit with us. If on your seat there is a Connect card, and we'd love to connect with you. Just there's pins in the seats and the back of the seats in front of you. Just take one of those and fill that out, and then take it to Journey Central on your way out, and we'll donate $10 to a charity of your choice. So if you've never filled out one of those cards, we want to encourage you to do that. You can give back to an organization and make a difference that way, but also that gives you a weekly email of everything that's happening. Also, I want to encourage you, if you didn't pick up one of these on your way in, on your way out, pick up one of these. We call it our Journey Guide, and there's a lot of great information in here about ways to get connected to Journey Church. And one of the ways that we do that is two things I want to communicate today. The first is tomorrow night is Men's Night Out. So all the guys in here are invited to join us at 7 p.m. at Dave and Buster's in Addison, just a couple miles from here. 7 o'clock, you don't need to sign up. Just show up, ask for Journey Church. We have a whole section that's reserved. Bring $15. It doesn't include your drink, but that includes food and games. So it's going to be a fun night just to get to know other men. So we really want to encourage you guys. All the men in this room. Just an easy way to connect with other men. Show up at Dave and Buster's 7 o'clock or anytime after. We'll go to about 9 or so and have a great time. Also, just want to let you know that next Sunday, immediately following second service, which is approximately 11:45, we're going to be hosting our Taste of Journey groups. And what this is for anyone who isn't currently in one of our small groups that meets throughout the week. And so if you're currently not in one of those groups, you're invited to this. We're going to cater it. It's going to be a free lunch right after service, second service right in here. Childcare will be provided if you need that. But this is just a great opportunity for you to hear and get to meet all of our leaders who are leading one of our small groups this fall. We have several exciting new groups that are starting this fall. And so this is just an easy way to get to know what groups are available and when they're meeting and what they're going to be studying and what they're going to be talking about this fall and winter. And so we want to encourage you to be a part of that. Even if you're not sure you have the time to commit to a group, it's a great opportunity to come and just hear about all the opportunities that we have for you to connect throughout the week, because church isn't just something we do on a Sunday morning. So let us know that you're coming, though, because we are going to buy a bunch of food. And so, again, in the back of the seats in front of you, there's an orange card. It's a Next Steps card, and just fill out that information, and then say you want to attend the Taste of Community, the Taste of Groups, and we'll make sure that you get all the details and have enough food for you. Before we dive into God's Word today, I'm going to ask you to join me in prayer as God leads us and speak to us right where we're at this morning. Will you join me in prayer? God, we thank you for just who you are. And we're so grateful that you're able to come here, that we're able to come here freely every week. And with all of our questions and all of our doubts, God, that you are able to just meet us right where we're at. And God, that speak into our lives. And so God, we ask that this morning, that you would pour down your Spirit on each of us today, that our souls and our hearts would be open to what you want to say this morning to us. God, we thank you for your truth that never changes, that is always powerful and always has a chance to make a difference in our lives. And so God, speak to us today through me. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Hey, who's enjoyed this song, The Who, right? I mean, classic song. Hey, in case you haven't been with us, over the past few weeks, we've been in this series called Identity. And today we're closing that out. We're finishing up. And I don't know about you, but for those of you who have maybe listened online or maybe been here over the last couple of weeks, I don't know about you, but this series has been very eye-opening for me and very impactful for me. You need to know that your pastor, even though I'm preaching this on a regular basis, I'm getting as much as you guys are getting. And this has been such a truth-telling series for me, an eye-opening series for me, as we just openly talk about, have open, honest discussions about the struggles we all face from time to time about who we are, like who we want to be in life, who we should be in life, who we think we are, who we really are. It's those moments in life, those times in our lives where we get confused about just who are we and what am I supposed to be doing in life. I don't know about you, but man, that happens all the time in my life. Now, as a little kid, when you're 8 years old, that's okay. But when you're 25 or 35 or 55 or 65, that can become an identity crisis, which can damage everything in your life, including your relationships, your career, your faith in God, everything. I remember when I was a kid, man, I went through all kinds of identities. I don't know about you, but growing up, every other month, I wanted to be someone else. And anybody here with me in the crowd, some of you are like, yeah, that's me right now, Steve. But when I was a little kid, everything I saw, I would get excited about. I was like, I want to become that person. I remember when I went to a fair when I was about 7 years old, and there was a fire truck there. And like little kids growing up in the 70s and 80s, I was so enamored by this fire truck and the fireman, and he let me put his hat on, and he let me get up into the truck, and I left there today, and I told my mom and dad, I want to be a fireman when I grow up. Any of you guys have that desire growing up? I mean, that's who I wanted to be, and I wanted to be that person so much that I talked my mom and dad into getting me a fireman outfit, and so I had the hat and the outfit, and that Halloween, I was a fireman, and I took all my little green army men, and we had a fireplace, and I would play with them and throw them into the fire and then put some water and throw it on them like I was a real fireman. My parents, by the way, did not like that, okay? They were worried about my future, but I loved it. I was going to be a fireman, and then I was in the comic books for a while. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but back in the 70s and the 80s, a famous comic book, one of my most famous comic books that I read was Richie Rich. And I loved Richie Rich, so much so that I wanted to be Richie Rich. And for a season, I asked my family to call me Richie Rich. Don't call me Steve, call me Rich. I am Richie Rich. That's where I go by. And then I fell in love with the TV show Batman. Not like the newest stuff, but like the 50s and the 60s, the cheesy Batman show. I mean, I loved it, and I wanted to be Batman. That's all I wanted to be, and I got a costume for Halloween, and I wanted to be Batman. Then it was Michael Jackson in the 80s. I'd grown a little bit, but I wanted to be like Michael Jackson, and so I bought the parachute pants, I bought the glove, I bought the glasses. I mean, I had it all. In fact, so much so that I learned how to break dance in the 80s, and that was very popular back then. Don't make fun of me. But I learned how to do all the moves because I wanted to be like Michael Jackson. I wanted to be a professional running back for the Dallas Cowboys. That was my dream. When I grew up, yeah, watch that. We don't have that stuff here at Journey Church. I wanted to be a running back for the Dallas Cowboys so much. It seemed like just like every other month, I wanted to be someone else. And I think there were 15 to 20 identities that I wanted to be growing up. I mean, it probably explains a little bit about my issues today, but that's just true. But here's what I've learned over the years. That quest to be someone we're not, that desire to be someone we're not, never goes away, does it? It really never goes away. In fact, throughout this series, what we've been discovering is that when you and I base who we are solely on the externals of our lives, what we've been saying is it makes for an incredibly disappointing, fragile, vulnerable identity. Why? Because as we've been saying in this series, you and I, we were created in the likeness, in the image of our maker, of our creator, the God of the universe. We were created as spiritual beings, which means simply, like we've been saying in this series throughout, is you are not just a body with a soul. That's how typically we see ourselves, a body with a soul. But you are not just a body with a soul. You are a soul with a body. You and I, we have a soul. We are spiritual beings because we are created in the image of our Maker. And it's critical that we get this. We need to begin to take this seriously because you and I, we will never be content. Listen to this. We will never be content with who we are. You will never be content in your life with who you are and who God made you to be. You will never be content if you continue to look at your identity through the lens of external things in life. See, as we've been saying in this series, you are an image bearer of God. As you sit here this morning, that's who you are. You are an image bearer of God. Now, unfortunately, that identity was hijacked in the Garden of Eden years and years ago by Adam and Eve's rebellion. And sin entered the world, and it tainted who you and I are. It began to taint our identity as an image bearer of God. But God is relentless in his pursuit of us. We sing that all the time. God is relentless in his pursuit of us. And so he sent his son Jesus to earth to live an incredible life, a life-impacting life, to die on a cross, to rise from the dead so that we might be reestablished with our Creator. So we might come to be reclaimed in our identity with him. And you need to understand this, is that as you sit here today, you have been given a new identity in Jesus. Not only are you an image bearer of God, and unfortunately sin messed that up, but now Jesus comes along and he wants to reclaim that identity. So now he's given you a new identity in him. It means you don't have to live in your past anymore. All the regret and the shame and the guilt, all of that is gone. When you commit your life to Jesus and to living according to him, he comes in and makes you new, the Bible says. Not perfect, but new. So that's where we've been in this series so far. But what often happens is, okay, Steve, I hear that I'm a new person. I'm new. In Jesus, I have a new identity. That's who I am now. I don't have to worry about my past and all the baggage that I have in my life. Okay, that's cool. Now what's going to happen? And unfortunately, what often happens in my life and your life is we begin to expect things. Right? Let's just be honest with ourselves. We see as soon as Jesus enters the equation of our lives, things get better. At least that's what we're told. My marriage improves, my finances improve, my relationships are fixed, my career gets better. That's what we honestly expect. If we were to be honest with ourselves, we expect all of that. And so we embrace this new identity in Jesus only to discover that sometimes, and sometimes, let's be honest, it's oftentimes our expectations of how life should play out in our life with Jesus doesn't always line up with our reality. And I've mentioned this before, but it's what I call the expectation gap. We've all experienced it in life, the gap between what you expect to happen and what actually does happen. The expectation gap. And every single one of us in this room, we've experienced it from time to time. I mean, for some of us, you expected your marriage to be perfect. At the very least, to make you happy. You expect your spouse to complete all of your needs and meet all of your needs, only to find out later that your husband or your wife is completely unable to do that. The expectation gap. Maybe you're sitting here today and you expected your career to really take off. Like you thought you were going into a career and you thought you were able to take off and move up in the company and make more money than you actually are making and enjoy it and have a good time and feel purpose and meaning in your job. But 5 years in, 10 years in, that career, that job of yours still hasn't delivered. Expectation gaps. Maybe for some of us, we've had a goal. And man, we worked hard at accomplishing that goal, and we thought, man, as long as I stay focused on this goal, and once I achieve this goal, then things will get better, things will be fixed in my life. But what we often find out is once we meet that goal, once we achieve the thing that we've been working hard and driving at for so long, it still hasn't delivered for us. Maybe some of us in this room, man, we were promised if we went to college and we got a great education and got in debt with college, we were able to spend $30,000, $50,000, $100,000. We were going to get a good, high-paying job afterwards, and we come out into the workforce after college, and we still haven't found the right job for us. The expectation gap. I think every single one of us in here can nod our heads and say, yeah, I've experienced that. Man, and this gap in life, it can leave you feeling like a failure, can't it? This expectation gap, it can leave you feeling completely defeated in life. You ever been there? And some of you are there right now. When your expectations don't line up with your reality. And when that happens in our lives, we start to question everything, don't we? We start to question everything, including who we are. We begin to doubt our own abilities and our own worth and our own purpose and meaning. And it's in those moments of those expectation gaps in life that we have two choices. You have one of two choices to make when you are in an expectation gap. And it's either you can either be victimized or you can be victorious. You can be victimized or you can be victorious. And over again, as we pick up the Bible, when we read the Bible, over and over again, we find a God who desires us as his creation to live in victory, to be victorious. Over and over again, page after page, we find a God who really wants you and I to be victorious in life. But what oftentimes happens is we allow the circumstances to leave us feeling defeated. Just the opposite. And the truth of the matter is, unless you and I are able to intentionally embrace our new identity in Jesus and our own self-worth as image bearers of God, we will continue to buy into the lie that we don't deserve to live in victory. Too many people in life feel like they don't deserve to live in the victory that God promises them. Now, throughout this series, we've been looking at the life of the Apostle Paul in the Bible. And we've been exploring his own up and down journey of his own identity. And it got so bad at some point that he felt like to get away from his past, he needed to change his name. He used to be called Saul, now he's called Paul. It got so bad with his identity. And so I'm sure Paul, as he begins this new life with Jesus, the old is gone, the new has begun. I'm going to start living for Jesus. I'm not going to worry about my past, Paul says. All that baggage, forget it. I'm sure that Paul had some high expectations of what that life was going to be like. I mean, after all, it was Jesus himself who called Paul to this life. And so I'm sure Paul said, okay, Jesus, you called me to this new life. I'm ready for all the benefits. I'm ready for all the great experiences that I'm going to have in a life with you. But listen to how he explains some of his experiences in his life up to this point with Jesus. This might surprise you. Again, I think he had high expectations, but in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, starting in verse 24, listen to what he's experiencing since he started this new life with Jesus. Verse 24, he says, 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. I've traveled on many long journeys. I have faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I have faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities, in the deserts, and on the seas. I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. I have worked hard and long, enduring many sleepless nights. I have been hungry and thirsty and have often gone without food. I have shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep me warm. I mean, wow. I mean, this is depressing, right? I mean, after I read what's going on in Paul's life, I'm like, I'm never going to complain about my life ever again. My guess is, though, there is an expectation gap that is happening in the Apostle Paul's life at this point. I mean, this isn't what he signed up for, right? This is not how he expected it to go. But as you read this whole chapter, here's what I love. The tone here isn't that Paul is complaining, like, feel sorry for me. You think you got it bad. Let me tell you what I've gone through. The tone here isn't like this. It's, you know what? I gave my life to Jesus. Some bad things have happened in my life. I mean, and I start to wonder, how in the world did Paul not feel completely defeated? At this point in his life, how did he not just give up on all levels? Like, if it was me, I would have said, you know what, this is too hard. I'm out of here. This isn't what I signed up for. Well, I think we get a glimpse of how he was able to do that. We get a glimpse of his mindset in a letter that he writes to a bunch of Christians in the city of Ephesus, and he's trying to encourage them, trying to challenge them to always look at the big picture. There's a big picture because so many times in life, we allow our immediate circumstances to get in the way of the big picture, and we allow our current circumstances to blow it for the rest of our lives. And Paul's encouraging them, listen, it's important to keep the big picture in mind. And this is the big picture he wants to give us this morning in Ephesians chapter 6, starting in verse 10. Listen to what he says. He says, a final word, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all the strategies of the devil. Now, again, we've talked about these strategies of Satan. He's my enemy and he's your enemy, and he wants nothing more than to bring chaos and confusion and doubt to who you think you are. When that happens in your life, when you are confused and when you begin to doubt who you are, when you go back to your past and relive all the baggage there, Satan has you right where he wants you. Paul says here, he says, put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all the strategies of the devil. Verse 12, for we are not, and this is key, listen to this. Verse 12, for we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. I mean, Paul's going deep here, right? I mean, it sounds like a combination of a horror film and a sci-fi movie, right? And I know what some of you guys are thinking as you sit here is like, I'm not sure about all this dark force, evil force, good versus bad. It sounds like the description of the next Star Wars movie out this winter. Like you're sitting there saying, I'm not sure I believe that there's this battle going on that Paul describes. I mean, this is heavy stuff that we're dealing with, that he's talking about here. These dark forces that we can't even see that are at work. But here's the thing. I think with you and I, what you and I often fail to understand or to recognize is that there are 2 different types of battles that we're facing in life. There are 2 types of battles that we're fighting every single day of our lives. The first battle is being fought in the physical world. The battleground may be at home, maybe at work, maybe in your neighborhood. But this is flesh and blood that Paul talks about. We can see, we can touch it. Our enemies, those who oppose us, it might be our boss, it might be our coworker, it might be a family member, it might be our spouse, it could be our kids, it could be an ex. Maybe it's the politicians or government or teachers or administration or doctors or terrorists. Our flesh and blood enemies might be people who don't look like us, people who don't act like us, people who just don't like us. These are the battles we know we fight every single day. Why? Because we can see them. We can see and touch these people. We know when we go to work, there is a battle some of us are fighting every single day. We know when we go home, there is a battle we're going to have to fight. We know it because we feel the toll that it's taking on our lives. This is the flesh and blood that Paul's talking about here. But then Paul comes along and he introduces us to a much more powerful battle that's going on in my life and in your life, whether you're aware of it or not. And it's this battle, it's fought in the spiritual world, which means we can't always see it, we can't always touch it. In fact, it's invisible to the human eye. But listen, it's just as real. It's just as real. This battle that's being fought in the spiritual realms, this is the greatest threat to you living out your God-ordained identity in life. Now, again, some of us might be skeptical, but I can guarantee you we've all felt it. We've all felt this spiritual battle, whether we know it or not. We didn't know what it was or how to explain it, but we know it's there. I think deep down inside, all of us understand that there is something at greater work in our lives than just what's on the surface, than just what's physical. See, just because we can't see it, just because we can't touch it, just because we can't explain it, doesn't mean that it's not real. Doesn't mean it's not there. Several of you, probably maybe many of you, have heard my story 4 summers ago. I was having an issue with my lip, and this, I thought it was a cold sore, and it seemed to never go away, It would scab up, and it wouldn't go away, and one day, it's sort of like it just needed to fall off, and it looked like it was ready to just fall off. So I asked Amy Jo, this was a Saturday night, about 9:30 at night, I asked Amy Jo to see if she could get her scissors and just clip it off, and just cut them off. And so she did that, and that wasn't the right thing to do because it started to bleed like crazy, like nonstop bleeding over and over and over again. We could not stop the bleeding. 20, 30 minutes went by. It was still gushing with blood. And so Amy Jo, 10:30 at night, Saturday night, she rushes me to the hospital, freaking out, don't know what's going on. They take a look at me. About 30 minutes later, they come back and they say, hey, this is what you have. It's a blood vessel that broke from a scar tissue that you had growing up. And so it was actually, I busted my lip playing football inside and hit my lip against the desk. Again, I thought I was a Dallas Cowboy running back, so it made sense then. It came back to me, and so this is what it is. They said, you're going to need a procedure to fix this, to cauterize this, to get this blood vessel fixed. They said, and I was like, can I go home now? And they're like, no, you're not going home. And I'm like, why? And they said, your blood pressure. And I'm like, what's wrong with my blood pressure? They said, it's 225 over 180. And I said, is that bad? If you don't know, it's bad. Really bad. Like, you should be dead bad. In fact, the doctors and nurses, they were like, you should be dead. Like, many people with this blood pressure reading, they've had a stroke or they've died. You're not going anywhere until we figure this out. And I can tell you, for the next 24 hours, I found out a lot about high blood pressure. A lot, more than I probably needed to know. But one of the things they call high blood pressure, and some of you guys are aware of this because you have it, is it's the silent killer. Because you can't always see signs of it. You can't always see any evidence that you have high blood pressure until you have a stroke or you die. I was lucky that I came in with another issue and God was with me. Obviously, God wanted me still on this planet. But what I found out that day is just because you can't just because you can't see it or touch it doesn't mean it's not there, doesn't mean it's not real. And Paul says, listen, there is this spiritual battle going on for your soul every single day. There is this unseen battle that most of us don't even realize in my life and your life. Again, you may be sitting here saying, Steve, I don't buy it. All the dark forces, and sounds too sci-fi to me. But you need to understand that I'm not here to convince you today that this is real. I'm not here to convince you that this is real. I'm simply here to try to explain to you what you've already been experiencing in your life. I don't have to share with you all the experiences in your life where you can say, you know what, maybe there is something at work. Maybe there is this battle. I felt it, Steve. I just didn't realize what it was. And Paul understood that there is this real battle going on for our souls, for our identity. And it's happening every single day. And so here's my advice with Paul saying that there's this real battle, this other battle that we don't always think about, but it's real and it's happening all around us. Here's my advice is choose your battle. Choose your battle. Have you ever had someone come to you and say, hey, you just need to pick your battles. You just need to choose your battles wisely. In other words, there are some battles that are more important than others to fight. Pick your battle, choose your battle. I remember when I was a youth pastor, I would have parents come to me all the time, especially parents of teenagers, and they would be frantic and they would be stressed, and they'd be like, I've got some real issues with my teen, and we're always fighting, we're always arguing, and as I calm them down, I'm like, that's pretty much how it goes as a parent of a teenager, and they would start sharing with me some of the conflict that they're having. Some of the conflict back in the day was, they never keep their room clean, right? It's always messy. And every day we're fighting over keeping the room clean. And I'm like, okay. And she really wants, my daughter really wants to dye her hair pink or purple or blue or whatever. And I sit back for a second. And I don't know how many times I said this, but I said this numerous times to parents who were freaking out about the conflict they were having with their teenagers. And I would look at them and say, you listen, there are going to be many battles with your teenager. You need to choose your battles. Pick the battles you want to fight. Because the hair color, the messy rooms, trust me, that is not a battle that you really want to fight. The battles you want to fight are when your daughter comes home and you find cuts on her arms, or drinking, or drugs, or sex with her boyfriend or girlfriend. Those are the battles you want to fight. Those other things, don't worry about those. Choose your battle, because you can't fight every battle. I don't know if you try or not. There's times in my life I'm stubborn. I want to fight every battle that I'm in. And what I've discovered is there are too many battles in life. Every day you can find a new battle to fight. Political, relational, whatever it is. Choose your battle. But I want to warn you. The battle that has the most potential to damage you and destroy your identity is not fought at home or at work or in the physical world. It's fought in the spiritual world. And understanding this, I think, is how Paul was able to get past his expectations of what his life was going to be like after Jesus, and how he was able to look within and realize, this is who God's called me to be. This is who I am in Jesus. Because look at what he says next. After he talks about this spiritual battle, listen to what he says in verse 13. He says, therefore, put on every piece of God's armor so you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then, after the battle, you will still be standing firm. Stand your ground, putting on the belt of truth and the body armor of God's righteousness. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news so that you will be fully prepared. In addition to all of these, hold up the shield of faith to stop the fiery arrows of the devil. Put on salvation as your helmet and take the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. What I love about this passage of scripture that Paul's talking about, he says there is this unseen battle that we're all facing in life, and we need to come at it as a warrior. I love the imagery here. It's almost as if Paul's telling us to live as a warrior. mean, warriors know their enemy. They know the fight, the battle to fight. They know not to be paralyzed by their fear. They are confident in the outcome. I think if Paul was here today, he would say, live as a warrior. See, I think far too many of us, if truth be told, far too many of us, those of us who come to church, those who follow after Jesus, we run and hide when the enemy attacks us. We cower in fear. We let doubt win. We let the unknown paralyze us. We allow the externals of life to define us. But Paul says, live as a warrior. Fight fiercely for your God-ordained identity in Jesus. Don't let the enemy of your soul win. Don't let the setbacks in your life get you down. Don't shrink back when chaos and confusion abound in your life. Don't drift away when your expectations fail to be met. Live as a warrior, Paul says. Stand in the battle and fight because you know that you have what you need to defeat the enemy. Live as a warrior. You have what you need. You have the truth on your side, Paul says. The truth that you are an image bearer of God. The truth is that you have a new identity in Jesus. The old is past. The new life has begun. The truth, with the truth telling you who you are, you can defeat the enemy. The righteousness of God, Paul says, that you are now perfect in God's eyes. He doesn't see all your mistakes and sins. He sees Jesus in you. And so now you are righteous and holy, so you can be reclaimed back to your identity in God. Live as a warrior. You have the peace of knowing that you no longer have to worry about your past and the shame and the guilt. All that is gone. Live as a warrior. You have your faith to do the impossible. You have a faith in God and Jesus who can do impossible, unbelievable things in your life if you let it. Live as a warrior, Paul says. See, victory always lies beyond the borders of the familiar. Victory always lies beyond the borders of the familiar. Victory is something that's just not going to be handed to you in life. You have to fight for it. Live as a warrior. And this is why this is so important, because part of our new identity in Jesus, the Bible tells us this, is that you are an image bearer of God, but part of your new identity in Jesus is that you are an overcomer. You are an overcomer. That's who you are in Jesus. The Bible says it in 1 John chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. It says, "For everyone born of God overcomes the world." This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. Then who is it except the one who believes in Jesus? See, because of Jesus, you and I, we have the power to overcome. We never have to feel defeated ever again, even when our expectations are not met in life. We never have to feel like we are overcome by fear or relationship problems or financial issues or emotional stresses and anxiety. Yes, there will be times in your life where you will feel overwhelmed. Yes, there will be times in life where you will experience an expectation gap. Yes, things won't always go as you had planned in life. Yes, chaos and confusion and troubles will try to threaten your identity in Jesus Christ. But understand, in those moments, remind yourself that you are an overcomer. Through the power of Jesus, you have the power to overcome whatever is thrown your way. I mean, you got this. And some of you in this room, you need to hear that this morning. You need to hear that you are an overcomer. You got this. You can overcome this. Whatever darkness is coming over your life, because the truth of the matter is, darkness, the dark forces, is powerless against you. Just a little bit of light of Jesus. Listen to this. Just a little bit of light of Jesus has the power to overcome the shadows, the dark shadows of your life. About 10 years ago, I was going through a transition in my life. And it was a tough transition. And I remember one night just laying on my bed sobbing to my wife about whether God had called me to do what I thought he'd called me to do, and who I was and who I was supposed to be. And I was going through a major identity crisis. I was talking to one of my friends about this, and we talked on the phone during this season on a regular basis. One day, I just, in all the confusion and chaos, I get this email from him, and it's just from him, and he doesn't say anything but these words, and I wrote them down because I'll never forget them. And these are the words that I want you to hear today more than anything else. He wrote these words, and these words for me in my season, but these are words that I hope you cling to today. And he simply said this: Steve, he says, you are unbeatable, not because you are invincible, but because Jesus is. Will you pray with me? God, we thank you today for your love for us, your relentless love for us, so much so that when our identity got messed up, you weren't cool with that. And you were willing to do whatever it took to reclaim us as your own. God, I pray right now that there are some of us in this room that we just feel overwhelmed with whatever the situation is in life. God, I pray that you would bring us the truth that we are overcomers, that we are a warrior with you, that you have given us the power to overcome the attacks that we feel in life. God, remind us that there is this other battle that most of us aren't aware of. Remind us that it's very real. And as we get closer to you and as we embrace our new identity in Jesus, your Son, that we will overcome. We will experience victory in life. God, I thank you for your truth that continues to speak to us right where we're at in life. Continue to speak to us over the next few moments. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
This part of our service is an extension of worship, and there's so many ways we can worship God, and one of them is just being here today, reading the Word. We were singing, loving the unlovable, but we're going to help you with some other ways that you can extend your worship today through God, and that is communion, offering, prayer. Those are three things that are very important to us here at Journey Church. So we want you to know, if you're new with us today, do not have to be a regular attender or a member, but if you believe in the Christ that died on the cross for you, communion is for you. So there'll be elements in the back of the room. As you feel led, you can go ahead and take the elements, bring them back to your seat, or you could just stay at your seat and use that as time as prayer and reflection. And of course, there's a time for offering. Excuse me. And offering is another form of extension of worship to God. And there'll be baskets in the back of the room as well. So as you feel led, just use that time. We also, forgive me, we have some people on the side of the wall here. If you're looking for prayer, feel free to reach out to anybody here that'd be willing to pray for you. Even if it's not here in this room right now, seek them out or somebody out, and we'd be happy to pray with you. So as you feel led. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. We want to thank you for coming today. We're glad you're with us and hope that the week is good for you. We just ask a friend, remind you that we have service every 9 and 10:30 every Sunday. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.